SaveWithConrad.com.
Hi, I'm Sean Soto. I live near St. Louis, but I listen to a few of the podcasts. Real and JR, 83 Weeks, quite a bit. My wife and I had experienced some issues with credit card debt, and I had heard the testimonials of others refinancing and helping alleviate their credit card debt, and so I had looked into it, and that's how we started. I worked with Larry. He was very thorough and was able to explain the entire process for us and made it about as easy as it possibly could be. It was far more easier than I anticipated it to be, actually. With the credit cards and everything that we had, we were paying the minimum monthly payment every month and basically getting nowhere for, I don't know, probably the last 5 years. And after everything was all said and done, we completely paid off all the credit card debt, and we were saving, after paying those off, we were saving over $300 a month. Oh, I would highly recommend it to anyone that's looking to save some money, because it was a tremendous help. I've already told my other friends about it. I'm Sean Soto. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I have saved over $300 a month with SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender.
SaveWithConrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
Well, you know how I am, because we got about a 45-minute late start here, because yours truly is like the high-tech redneck of all high-tech rednecks. And I was having trouble with my setup and my connection and my wireless, and it was just a mess. But I think I got it figured out. But, man, that shit irritates me. I get so pissed off at myself because I'm almost helpless when it comes to technology, and I hate that with a passion.
What were you more pissed off about, Eric? Having a little technical problem this morning or watching AEW Dynamite last night?
Man, I don't think I was pissed off last night watching it, although, I read back some of my tweets this morning. Clearly, I was agitated. But it was just it's more frustrating than anything. It didn't make me angry. It just like, God almighty, talk about blowing opportunities. Like it drives me crazy, but it is what it is.
I've always been the eternal optimist for AEW, but I didn't get to watch the show live last night. I started watching this morning on DVR when you were having some technical problems. I saw the first half of the show, and man, usually I can find something that I'm pretty excited about and looking forward to with AEW, and I'm kind of struggling right now to find it. Is there a bright spot right now for AEW? Like, I know that we've established that there's not some magical talent they can sign and that'll turn their fares around, but is there something they can do to re-engage this audience and get them excited? Because it does feel like, there was so much optimism around AEW, and it feels like as time goes on, some of that starts to wane. And I think maybe right now, justifiably a little bit.
I don't think it's waning. I think what's happened is there was so much goodwill early on.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted AEW to be successful. Everybody wanted a fresh alternative. And, there was a lot of promise. Tony, convinced people in the very beginning that this was going to be an alternative and it was going to be a sports-based, wrestling product. And there was a lot of things that Tony hyped, that they gave everybody a lot of optimism and excitement and goodwill. The problem with goodwill is once you crap on those people, once you fail to deliver on your promises, and then over the last couple of years produce such horrible television that goodwill, they don't just fade away. The viewers do, and we've seen that. But the goodwill comes back to bite you in the ass because then people are pissed off.
Right.
It's like you promised somebody something and then you didn't deliver, and all you're doing is making excuses for it. And that goodwill can really come back and bite you in the ass if you're not careful.
I hope they can turn it around, but something I wanted to bring up that I know the internet wrestling community's had a lot of fun with, but I want to ask you, like, I know that the base of AEW fans, the AEW fan base, does not want anything to do with the Costco guys being at Full Gear. I get that, but it's a 0-hour match against QT Marshall. who's pretty valuable behind the scenes for AEW. He helps run, the Nightmare Factory in Atlanta with Cody Rhodes. A lot of great AEW talent has gone through there. Like, he's the office, for the company. And he's got a match, as silly as it may be. I can't believe this is real with the Costco guys. And they are, for better or worse, pretty big deal virally, to the point where they wound up on the Tonight Show. So it's one thing for us all to sort of cross our arms. And I've seen a lot of, like, even my internet wrestling friends pitching an absolute fit that this match is going to happen at Full Gear. But it's like, they got on the Tonight Show. And respectfully, there's not a whole list of AEW talent who could just pick up the phone and get on the Tonight Show. Like, whether you value...
Like none of them. Like not one of them.
Well, that's my point. You finally got a little bit of mainstream attention here, as silly as it may be. And I'm not saying that the Costco guys need to take over the AEW programming, but we're not even seeing like AEW engage with them socially, I don't think, to sort of build any sort of hype or story or whatever. And I know there's criticism to go around about, well, they're involving children in the viral thing. The kids aren't going to be in the match. It's with the dad. They could have done something, but it feels like they're content to not try. And I know that, we look back and we say, well, we didn't like that Jay Leno was involved with WCW. Yeah, but you were courting mainstream attention. You're trying to get people who don't normally watch the product to watch AEW. So you had Jay Leno and you had an opportunity to go on the Tonight Show. But it feels like AEW thinks maybe the brass believes this is beneath them to court mainstream attention, but I just don't get why you wouldn't even try.
There's so much inherently wrong, and it starts with Tony Khan. It starts with the lack of vision, absolute lack of understanding, zero comprehension of what the wrestling audience, the 3 to 5 million active wrestling fans, depending on who you believe, that do tune into wrestling each and every week. That's your audience. It's not Dave Meltzer's fucking figure 4 online dirt sheet universe, but that's who Tony Khan is booking to. Everything that's done in AEW is done from the perspective of Tony Khan's fandom. And unfortunately, Tony Khan's fandom doesn't represent the other 98.8% of people that enjoy professional wrestling. Tony's booking for himself in his own fantasy. There's nothing resembling a thought process, creative or otherwise, as you just pointed out. That's a marketing positioning opportunity. It's reaching an audience, as you just said, that you don't normally reach.
Right.
And it's fun. It should be fun. It shouldn't be taken seriously. And the internet wrestling community, which are the simps that follow the Dave Meltzer line of thinking about what professional wrestling should be, they have zero creativity. They live in a little bubble. They're only comfortable with people just like them. And they just don't have any vision themselves. And that's who Tony Khan is, it's the cage match ranking crowd, along with Dave Meltzer. It's just such a waste of opportunity. And Tony probably doesn't care about wasting his money. He's got so much of it, it doesn't matter to him. But it matters to the industry. When people say, AEW is good for the industry. Fuck, it is. There's nothing good about it. It's good for the people that get a paycheck that might not otherwise be getting one in the wrestling business. It's good for them. Of course it is. And I don't begrudge them taking advantage of the opportunity. But to suggest that it's AEW's good for the wrestling industry, and I'll tell you why. Because any network executives that stumble across AEW and thinking about perhaps getting involved in the wrestling business, and they see AEW, it's like, fuck, no, I don't want to do that. That's horrible. I don't want that on my network. I don't want anything close to that on my network. It is bad for the business. It's a bad representation of what the professional wrestling industry can be on television. It's horrible. There's nothing. I mean, from from the concrete floor up in that arena last night, I didn't see anything that represented a professional production. The talent shows up wearing their street clothes that, I'm no fashion mogul, but they're wearing shit to the ring that I wouldn't be caught dead wearing on the street. It's like white wife beater shirts were like the wardrobe du jour last night. First of all, you don't wear white on television. That's like rule number one. Never wear white on television. And it's like last night, everybody's coming out in white T-shirts because that was on under the shirt they were wearing to the building that day.
Wait, hang on.
I don't know. Just everything about it was so low budget, ill-conceived, and stupid. We're the best wrestling my ass. It was some of the most horrible wrestling I've ever sat down and forced myself to watch. Some matches were okay, but it was garbage from beginning to the end. And I watched it last night because, I typically don't watch AEW. It's just not on my list of things to do. There's nothing about it that I find interesting or compelling. But, I heard about, basically a big reset. Moxley's taking over TBS. Okay, here we go again.
Oh, goodness.
NWO version 2.0 and AEW. The first one worked so well, they decided to do it again. And I thought, well, I'm going to give it a shot. Maybe it is a real reset. Maybe they're going to approach the product differently. Maybe I'm going to see something to get me excited and to make me think that there's hope. And instead, I think it was one of the worst wrestling shows I've ever watched. From the concrete floor in the arena up. It was so bad. So bad.
I'm scratching my head to figure out what's next for AEW. I couldn't help but notice, if you look at their ticketing site, AEWTIX.com, Eric, as of now, they don't have any buildings announced or on sale for January. The only things on sale for 2025 right now are Grand Slam Australia, which I believe is a stadium show, Suncorp Stadium. The rumor and innuendo is ticket sales are maybe not as robust as they would have hoped. All in Texas is being marketed, of course, for July 2025. And Forbidden Door has been announced for August 2025. But we don't know where TV is happening in January. And I've seen some speculation or heard some whispers from people in and around the business. Are they setting up a residency? Like, are they headed towards, do you think, perhaps an Impact model where they're in a soundstage sort of deal? We saw them do this around All In last year, where they set up in Arlington, Texas at the esports arena. Do you think that's what 2025 looks like for AEW? More studio wrestling?
It's so hard to say, but if they don't have any buildings booked, that's kind of, it's the middle of November. For all intents and purposes, it's the end of November, business-wise. We're getting close. You got Thanksgiving in there. And here's what happens, in at least in my world, in what was my world in the entertainment business. People basically take a month off between Thanksgiving and Christmas. They may still show up to work and they'll do the absolute minimum required, but most people are really not making too many big plans or decisions until after the holidays. It's frustrating, but it's just the way it is. But if they don't have a building booked, if they don't have tickets on sales, if they don't have marketing in place, if they're not doing any promotions in the local markets for January and February at this point, I'd suggest to me that they've already made the decision. They're probably going to be back at Daly's place or something like it. They can't keep going to big arenas. They're going to these 10,000 seat arenas, 15,000 seat arenas, whatever they are, 8,000 seat arenas. And they're blocking them off because they can only put about 2,500 people at a live professional wrestling show, live on TBS, which is it's different. I get it. I've been there. It's painful. But you can't keep booking big buildings when you can't put anybody in them. Number one, it's economically not sustainable. But again, it doesn't matter with Tony Khan because money's not the issue. Fiscal performance is not anything Tony Khan has to worry about. but the quality of the show suffers as well. The perception with television viewers when they're sitting at home and they can hear guys, one person, not like 50 people chanting in unison, but they can hear comments from one guy back in the cheap seats. It's so quiet. There's just no energy. And when you're sitting at home and you're watching a match that isn't really too interesting to begin with, and you begin to question yourself as to why am I spending any time watching this? And then the crowd is dead, except for the one guy way in the back says, "Oh, go back to Roman," while Moxley's wrestling, Moxley, Mr. Intensity. He's out there cutting a promo of his life, or attempting to, and you got a heckler in the back that you can hear from 300 feet away, and it makes it to the microphone, and you can hear it. What does it tell you as a fan sitting at home? You're not watching anything that's worth your time, is what it tells you subconsciously, if not consciously. So, yeah, they're going to have to figure something out, because doing what they're doing is clearly not working. And I don't think collectively, I don't think there is enough intellectual horsepower when it comes to how to produce a television show and how to build a brand. I think if you took all of the office staff in AEW and you combined their strengths, you wouldn't come up with one person who could figure out how to turn this company around. It's not going to turn around. It'll keep going until either TBS goes, okay, I know we had a deal. And by the way, we don't know if there's any outs in that deal. We don't know if there's thresholds in that deal. We don't know if there's pressure on Tony to maintain a certain level of audience, or perhaps that television agreement won't be a 3-year agreement, might not even be a 2-year agreement. If there are thresholds and performance thresholds, which there should be and usually are. But until Tony gets tired of blowing money, or until TBS goes, this is just not working for us, there's a better opportunity somewhere else, Tony's going to keep doing what he's doing, because he's just entertaining himself and his group of little IWC fans that help him run his company, because that's what it is. All these people are internet wrestling people. That's all they are. They don't have any experience. They don't have any success. They don't have any footprint outside of being wrestling fans that follow Dave Meltzer on the internet. It's so sad. Such a wasted opportunity for everybody, for the industry as a whole, for wrestling fans who are obviously pretty disappointed. All you got to do is read some of the threads about the show. Forget about mine. Forget about my take. Just go read some of the other stuff. That's that goodwill coming back to bite AEW in the ass. And the question you really asked me early on, is there anything that they can do to turn it around? The answer is, I don't think so. There's no big talent that's going to come in and save the day. Every big talent they brought in from WWE shit the bed. Mercedes Moné, $5 million. She's got her own writer, making 7 figures. Are you kidding me?
Well, listen, we don't know all that's to be factual.
Yeah, we don't. No,
I mean, do you think Jen Pepperman
and innuendo? And I should have prefaced it by saying that.
But
it doesn't change the fact that she came in with all this hype, and she was a big star in WWE. There's no question about that. But she gets to AEW, they give her the keys to the car, and she drove it right over a cliff. I don't know. You all right?
Just wanted to make sure you finished your monologue there. Goodness gracious, man. We got a lot to talk about today. We're going to be talking about Disco Inferno, but I do want to talk a little bit more about AEW. But right now, we do have to pay a few bills, and let me just give you guys a life hack. Tushy is what your dad wants for Christmas. It's what your husband wants for Christmas. It's what your wife wants for Christmas. They don't know they want it, but they do. I am so proud that we have this sponsor on 83 Weeks, and it's right here in time for the holidays. Butthole cleanliness has been a priority of mine for a long time now, and anyone who's worked with me knows that. I have this at the office. I have this at every toilet here in my home. We even have a vacation home, and every single toilet has a Tushy on it. The Tushy Bidet is the real deal. And right now, Tushy is dropping deep discounts on bidet life essentials that will transform your bathroom habits and your butt for life. It's time to back away from boring grifts and dirty habits and save on a luxury lifestyle upgrade that you'll use every day. Listen, nobody in your life remembers what you got them last year for Christmas. I don't know if you know that or not, but they've forgotten. This is a life-changing thing. There's two types of people in this world. People who love their Tushy and people who never had one. That's it. Go right now to hellotushy.com to see this week's savings on bidets, bundles, and instant bathroom upgrades. The Tushy Bidet easily attaches to your existing toilet without the need for additional plumbing or even electricity. Washing with a precise stream of fresh water removes 99% of bacteria compared to wiping with toilet paper. Installation is simple. It only takes about 10 minutes to complete. Literally anyone can do it. It's also easy to use. You sit down, you do your business, you turn the knob on, and you get a refreshing stream of clean water. When you're done, you pat dry with toilet paper and you're good to go. You're going to use 80% less TP. That's what people who've made the switch are saying. And there's no more clogged toilets. If you're using wet wipes or you're having to use plungers or none of that anymore. Save your time, save your money, and save your ass at the same time. Go right now to Hello Tushy. I'm telling you, this is the real deal. HelloTushy.com is where you want to go. Use our promo code 83weeks. By the way, I should mention, it comes with a 30-day hassle-free return and a 12-month warranty. And I know you're maybe on the fence about this, but let me tell you, when you buy one of these for your mom, for your dad, for someone in your life, for grandpa, for your favorite uncle, get one for you too. You will not regret it. Give the gift of practical luxury that benefits everyone in the household. And for a limited time, our listeners get 10% off their first bidet order when you use the code 83weeks at checkout. That's 10% off your first bidet order at hellotushy.com with the promo code 83weeks. Don't forget to give us a shout while you're there and let them know that we sent you. Go right now to hellotushy.com for the best gift this holiday season.
That's what AEW needs. AEW needs a giant bidet, and they could just set the whole company down on top of it, hit that button, and just start over. Just clean everything out. Start over. Did I ever tell you about my first experience with a bidet?
No.
I was in Japan. Actually, Michael Stutler, who's here with us from Ad-Free Shows, watching along live, which I really encourage people to do. If you're listening to this and you're not a part of Ad-Free Shows, what the hell are you doing? You could be joining us live, and we could share Michael Stutler's story. Michael said, we've had one at our house. We're talking about a Tushy. We've had one at our house since visiting Japan several years ago. My wife insisted, and it all worked out in the end. But here's the part. So I go to Japan, one of the first times I go to Japan, and we were staying at the Keio Plaza, which is a pretty cool hotel. And I go in, and I'd never seen a bidet before. I didn't even know what one was. I don't think I'd ever heard the word before. I lived a pretty isolated life as a kid growing up in Detroit and Pittsburgh. But anyway, so I go into this big, luxurious suite, and I look and I see this thing. It's in the toilet. And I said, all these buttons that look like I had a plane at the time, a Cessna T210, turbocharged Cessna, 6-passenger single-engine plane. And the toilet with all the buttons and the knobs that look like the dashboard of my plane. Okay, what is going on here? So I'm looking down into the toilet, trying to figure it out while I'm pressing buttons, and bam, I get a face full of bidet water. It was shocking, but I figured it out, and I started using it. And when we built our house here in 98, we had a bidet put in. Beautiful thing. It's a great product. I highly encourage. Look, you have no idea what happens to your self-confidence when you're walking around knowing that you have the cleanest ass in the building. It just changes things.
Go check it out right now, hellotushy.com. Be sure to use our promo code 83weeks. So listen, man, we were talking a little bit before I had to pay some bills there about Jon Moxley's takeover. And I have to admit, I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't that. You know, it was said that he was taking over the Superstation, but I've also read interviews where he's saying this hard reset is going to be one of the most challenging things he's done in his career. I'm saying all that to say, I don't think we've seen the change yet, Eric. I'm wondering, do you think, and I don't have any insight, I haven't talked to anybody, I'm just shooting from the hip here now as a wrestling fan. I just want to be honest. Do you think that there is a chance that the reason some of these buildings haven't been announced yet is because that's going to become part of the story? Like, do we get to a culmination of the World's End pay-per-view in December, and then January or February or what have you, we're doing something that is different than? Maybe it means we're doing more cinematic matches. Maybe that becomes the way Dynamite is presented. Maybe it isn't a sound stage, but it's under Death Rider rules and the show looks and feels different. I don't know what to expect here, but I'm having trouble reconciling what we saw in his interview saying this is the most challenging thing. This takeover is going to be one of the most challenging things he's done of his career, while also knowing there's no buildings on sale yet for January. It feels like something's got to fit here, right?
I mean, that is an optimistic perspective, or hope probably is a better way of saying that. And I can see that perhaps this is not, first of all, if that's the case, I don't think I would have drawn so much attention to this particular show, because I think perhaps there were a lot of people like me. They're going, oh, okay, they're going to do something different. I think I'll check it out. That's the good news. The bad news is it was horrible, which will have a pretty bad impact on any potential growth going forward. If people have already made up their mind, like I did, the hard reset was a letdown. It didn't meet any expectations that I think anybody had. It was embarrassingly bad. But you drew a lot of attention to it by cutting that promo. If there is a plan, and that's giving people a lot of credit, if there is a plan in place for a more comprehensive hard reset, creatively, building-wise, cinematic, whatever, production-wise, if there is that, then I think it was a mistake to use this show to set up what's to come. But that's, subjective, I guess. Let's hope that there's something. I don't know what it could be, because when you say things like that, like, there's still the optimistic part of me, right? It's part of being an entrepreneur. I guess it's one of the downfalls sometimes of being, for me, it has been, for being an entrepreneur, is that you can see light at the end of any tunnel. It's like, fuck it, I can see it. There's a little bit of light there. I'm going down that tunnel. I don't care. I've done that way too many times in my life. Still do it from time to time. So maybe there's light at the end of their tunnel, but have they done anything up to this point to suggest that there's any kind of logic, any kind of vision, any kind of plan that could result in that light actually becoming real at the end of the tunnel and being a bright light and being successful? I haven't seen anything. On the contrary, everything that I've seen them do suggests that there is no thought process, there is no logic, there is no creative, there's no basic understanding of creative and how it works. It's just guys going out there screaming and yelling and wrestling. I don't know. Let's hope. I've said this so many times over the last couple of years when it comes to AEW. I so hope I'm wrong. I really do. It would be fun for me to be wrong. I'd be on here making fun of myself for being so negative about AEW. I can take a joke. I can laugh at myself. I do it all the time. I enjoy it. Have fun. But if there's just nothing that they've done to suggest to me that there's anything remotely close to vision or execution or planning, but like I said, hopefully I'm wrong, man. Hopefully there is light at the end of the tunnel. There's going to be a big surprise, and starting in January or maybe before Moxley's challenge, this most challenging thing he's ever done in his career, will start to take shape. And we can look back at this and go, oh, see how wrong Eric was. He's been wrong so often about AEW. Right like 98% of the time when it comes to my thoughts about AEW and projections and predictions. But maybe this is one of those 2% of the times when I'm wrong. Let's hope.
I realize that the wrestling world has changed. I mean, look no further than seeing WWE this week doing double Raw and double SmackDown tapings. So the performers have more time with their families the week of Thanksgiving. I mean, historically, Thanksgiving night was a really big night in professional wrestling. So I'm all for, our attitudes towards the performers and business growing and maturing and evolving. But I can't help but wonder, like right now, and I know MJF has been off making a movie with Adam Sandler, and I hope it makes $1 billion and a huge success and becomes a springboard for him. But I think if I'm Tony Khan, I'm thinking, man, ticket sales are down. It feels like ratings are down. Maybe interest is waning a little bit. I got to have my top stars. Like, I can't imagine a scenario of this happening in the WWF where, you've got a guy, one of your top stars, making buku dollars, and he's not here. The wrestling product is suffering and he's off making a movie, but we're still paying him. Like, maybe Vince wasn't all wrong. He needed these guys to be involved. Like, I remember there's a lot of times where they had to structure filming contracts around wrestling appearances. Maybe Rock or Stone Cold or whoever wouldn't be available for all the house shows, but they were on TV. So to see these long absences for guys who were able to perform that, are bona fide box office, I know that, Jim Cornette famously says, how can I miss you if you don't go away? But every now and again, kind of need you to be here. We need you, man. Right?
There's two sides of that. And I see both of them. I was in that position a couple of times in WCW where talent would come to me and say, hey, look, I've got a movie. This is a big opportunity. And I think, like Tony, it's probably one thing that we had in common is I looked for a way to make that happen. I would never want someone working for me that had an opportunity like MJF has to come to me and just shut them down. Say, sorry, man, we need you too much. We're paying you X amount of money a year. Your first obligation is here. Even if it's true, you don't want to put it that way because that talent, I'm going to use MJF and like, I don't know MJF real well. Right. We stay in touch occasionally via text, but it's not like I sit down and have long conversations with him. So I don't know what really makes him tick. Right. But if you take somebody like MJF, who obviously has a tremendous amount of talent and abilities, we've seen it in the ring, and now we're going to have an opportunity to see it on the big screen. You don't want to ever tell that talent, no, you can't do that. You've got to try to make it work. But business is business. And again, financially, it doesn't matter to Tony. He just doesn't care. He doesn't have to care. I wouldn't care either if I was him. I'm not knocking him. But the brand is suffering. And finding a way to accommodate an opportunity is one thing. Sending somebody off for 30, 60, 90 days, I don't know how long MJF's going to be out of the picture. But movie making is a long process. And depending on how many scenes he's in, he could be on lockdown for a while. Now you're hurting your brand.
Let me give you some context here, Eric. I understand you're trying to defend the opportunity. MJF has wrestled on television 3 times this year. 3.
Well, part of that was injury. Part of that was injuries, right?
My point, you're injured and then we let you go make a movie. So he's on AEW payroll all year this year. We've seen the business from the start of the year to now continue to respectfully, it's slipping. I got to have you, man. You've had 3 matches on TV this year, and he's not the only talent. I'm just saying, man, 3 matches this year on TV. Like, and I understand the magic of MJF is his promos and all that, but he's not even there doing that. Like, you've got arguably what most people think is the best wrestler in the world in Will Ospreay, but I don't know. It just feels like, what are we doing? We got to have the guys actually there. It doesn't make sense to me. I can't make it make sense.
And here's the other side. Now, if I was MJF's agent or manager, I would tell him, stay on that movie set as long as you possibly can.
Absolutely.
Do not get near an AEW camera until you're absolutely forced to by court order. Because the more he's involved in what's going on in AEW right now, the more his stock is going to go down.
But that's the issue. Like when this thing first got going, everybody's a big team and we're in this together and raw, go team. And now I see guys in AEW seemingly doing like a lot of college football players right now. They're making business decisions. Hey, it's not in my best interest to show up there. I know things aren't good right now. I don't know how that would be good for me or my brand to be involved, but it's like, dude, there's a few levers I think could be pulled right now. Because as a fan, you know, it's not the same Dynamite I used to enjoy right now. And maybe this is the calm before the storm. If we're going to be the delusional optimists, maybe that hard reset is still coming. Let me ask you, I sort of freestyled something a minute ago. If you had your druthers, would you prefer they continue to do a touring model, that they set up a sound stage like TNA did, or should they go more cinematic, as crazy as of an idea as that may be?
They've got Mike Mansouri there, who's quite capable of directing and producing cinematic stuff. So they have the human resource to pull it off. They have the financial resources to pull it off. Again, it's going to come down to creative, and there's a giant hole that I don't know who's going to fill it. Are we going to have cinematic hardcore matches? Yawn. It'll be interesting for the first couple times, but it's not sustainable unless the stories are equal to or better than the production values that these cinematic matches can potentially represent. So you've got a great director, but you don't have a writer. You don't have any performers that are capable of telling the type of story that a cinematic match would showcase and bring life to. That's real acting now. It's different than going out and having a match. Maybe that would work. Again, I haven't seen anything to indicate that it would or could, but perhaps it might work.
Let me make a comparison.
But we don't want to go back to what you're talking about with, guys, managing a business as opposed to being obligated to the company. That's Tony Khan. In order for Tony to take a position with MJF or anybody else who is worrying about their brands and worrying about their own business versus the companies while they're getting a check, that to me is mind-boggling, but whatever. And the only way to manage that is to put a stop to it, or at least put some controls on it. That takes leadership. That takes somebody standing up in front of someone and saying, no, we're not going to do that. And here's why we're not going to do it. It's not just because I'm a dick, but I can't let you do what you want to do, or you're going to do what you don't want to do, because first and foremost, I have a contract with you and you have agreed to provide services for the amount of money that I'm paying you. And I expect you to live up to that contract. Number one. Number two, you work for a company and it's kind of a team. We can't all be our own independent contractors managing our own independent business whenever it's convenient for us. We work in an AEW show. That takes leadership. Have we seen any leadership out of Tony Khan since he started? When he's been under pressure to manage the talent? Because managing talent in any business, whether it's probably college football, professional football, any sport, any movie set, you're dealing with egos. You're dealing with people who aren't your average people when it comes to their personalities. It's why they became rock stars, actors, actresses, wrestlers, whatever, stand-up comedians. These people are unique individuals, and you have to learn how to manage them. I did not do a great job at that, and I'll be the first to admit it. I learned a lot along the way, and I'd probably be better at it today than I was in 1997. I was learning on the job and got thrown into deep water real fast. But as a result of that experience, I think I stand on pretty solid ground when I say that in order for Tony to address these issues, he has to become a leader that so far we haven't seen. A lot of people like Tony. Tony's got a big heart. People put Tony over all the time. Of course, they're getting a check to do it, but not saying that they're not sincere. I think Tony is a nice guy.
He is.
His heart is in the right place.
It is.
But that doesn't make him a leader or a writer
I mean,
or an executive.
Here's a cliche a lot of people are familiar with, Eric. In the old good cop, bad cop scenario, we've heard a lot of people in WWE through the years, when they would leave for whatever reason, their run with Vince would end. They would say something like, "Oh, I got along great with Vince. It was that damn JR that had it in for me. Oh, I got along great with Vince. It was that Johnny Ace that had it in for me." I don't know that there is a quote unquote bad cop in AEW. I mean, we know that Tony Khan is going to be the good cop. He's going to be in the Vince McMahon role. I get that. But if the speculation is true that he's just averse to confrontation and he's not a confrontational person, it feels like he needs a bad cop. Is there a bad cop out there in wrestling who could be an asset to Tony Khan that you would recommend?
I'm sure we could make a list of 5 or 6 people that you and I would both agree on would be great in that role. Right off the top of my head, bring in JBL. Not that he would do it, but there's a guy that understands, that gets it, that certainly understands business, but also understands the world from the perspective of talent. And that's kind of what it takes, really. You know, it's funny you say, "Oh, Vince McMahon is the good guy." There were times, everybody wanted Vince McMahon's approval because that was how he managed to carry himself. And that was his style of leadership. But he would be really hard on you when it was appropriate. He would be an immovable object when it came to certain issues, when it came to protecting his company. Yeah, people say, "I got along great with Vince," but they got along great with Vince when it was convenient and when it was easy. But when it was tough, there was nobody tougher than Vince McMahon. But if you take a JBL, and I'm not advocating for him because, again, he wouldn't go near this. I don't think he would. I wouldn't if I was him, and he doesn't need it. But you take somebody like JBL who's been through it all, who's seen it all, who's dealt with every kind of eccentric personality that the wrestling business in general seems to attract in any company. I'm not taking a shot at anybody. It just is what it is. There's a reason you're out there in your underwear performing in a ring, because you are different. You love to perform. Those people are unique, and you have to be able to deal with them. You have to learn how to manage. So yeah, I'd get JBL in there in a minute.
I can't imagine a scenario where JBL would want to do that. I mean, that dude doesn't have. I mean, who wants?
I agree.
Yeah, no chance.
And here's the other side of it. Because of Tony's, what I've heard from others about his nature and the fact that he doesn't even like heat. How do you have a wrestling show if you don't like heat? All you want is people chanting, "This is awesome." I mean, what the fuck? You don't get that without heat, right? But if he doesn't like confrontation, someone who has and it's going to take a strong personality. It's not going to take a politician. It's not going to take a smooth talking salesman. It's going to take somebody that can look you in the eye and say, "No." Let me take that back. Fuck no. How's that? If you don't have somebody like that, it's not going to work. But if you do have somebody like that, can you imagine the conflict that person would have with Tony? Because Tony's not going to agree with that approach very often. It's not in his nature. I don't see it. I don't see there being a solution. Again, I've said this and we both agree that it's never going to happen. The only solution that I see for AEW is for Tony Khan to be a true executive, a true leader, and step away from the things that he's not good at. And that takes honesty, and it's a little uncomfortable admitting that you're not good at certain things that you need to be good at, like me in technology, for example. But it's very easy to find people who can and who would. And Tony should, if I was Tony's mentor, I would say, "Tony, use your assets. You've got the money. You've got some connections. You've got so much opportunity. Put the right people in place and give them the ability to make their own decisions. Don't try to influence them. Sure, you need to be aware, but you've got to take a risk. You've got to take a chance on some people that have a track record of success in any aspect of his business, not just, friends that put you over in cage match rankings or on Reddit. the whole, the Will Washingtons, the people that are in there are just, they're in this little pool of small-minded thinkers with very limited, if any, experience in the world that they're trying to be successful in.
How the shit is Will Washington catching strays on the show? What'd he do?
I don't know. Somebody mentioned his name the other day. He's kind of an internet geek, feeding rumors and shit like that. I don't know if it's true or not, but his name just popped into my head.
Man, I need to unwind. I need some Vea. Man, are you ready for a break from the crowded stores and all of the endless gift lists? I know I am. Restore your zen and embrace the natural power of cannabis this holiday season with Vea. This holiday season, unwind and recharge with Vea. Whether you're enjoying a quiet evening at home, embracing that festive cheer, Vea's premium THC and THC-free gummies will help you find your perfect holiday balance. Vea is well renowned for their award-winning THC and THC-free gummies and vapes, the THCA flower, soothing topicals, calming drops, all crafted with the highest quality hemp sourced from trusted, independently owned American farms. And the best part? Vea legally ships to nearly all states in the U.S. in discreet packaging directly to your door and with a worry-free guarantee. There's no medical card required. So if you're 21 or over, check out Vea's website link in the description for our show and use our code 83weeks for 15% off. I'm a big believer in this product. I know you will be too. We vet everything that we promote and talk about here on the program. I want you to know this is made in the USA. They've got award-winning service. It's quality ingredients that you'll enjoy that's been sourced from the finest hemp for your peace of mind. It's all lab tested and certified. It's also affordable and accessible. It's not like a friend of a friend or you heard something. No, it's going to come right to your door in discreet packaging, premium products that fit in your budget. I'm a big believer in this, and I really do believe that Vea is the only lifestyle hemp brand out there. So this holiday season, give the gift of peace of mind to yourself. If you're 21 or over, check out the link to Vea in our description. Use that code 83weeks. You'll get 15% off. And after you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and let them know that we sent you. This holiday season, enhance every day with Vea. Hey, listen, I wanted to ask you before we move on, we are going to talk about Disco Inferno today. He's our topic. But you sort of dismissed the idea of cinematic, and I wanted to circle back. Did you watch Lucha Underground at any point? Have you ever seen any Lucha Underground?
Yeah.
What'd you think of that?
I don't know if I ever told you this, but I almost went to work for them. I won't say almost. I had a meeting, maybe two meetings with them, and Mark Burnett was involved, and I had met with Mark and did some things with Mark previously. So I took the meeting and was kind of interested. They didn't offer me a job, but I loved the idea of it. Again, it was different. It was taking wrestling in a different direction, not to compete with the traditional wrestling format, but to be kind of added value, so to speak. I liked the idea of it. I don't know if it was given enough time or if the people involved kind of hit a limit in terms of what they could do with it creatively, or if it was a financial issue. I don't know anything about the end result of Lucha Underground, but conceptually, I really thought it was kind of a cool idea. And I did watch some of it and I liked it. Again, it was different. At least it captured my imagination.
It felt like it was ahead of its time. And I'm wondering, do you think that could work in 2025?
Something like it could, sure. I mean, there's so much wrestling out there right now between WWE, AEW, TNA, whoever else is out there. There's a lot of wrestling on television, and it's all essentially the same. Some of it's way better than others, as we've just discussed, but essentially it's the same thing. And I think if somebody came along and could figure out from a production point of view how to present the product in a completely different way, so it isn't really trying to compete with traditional wrestling as we know it on television, but just provide something that's a little unique and different. I think there's an opportunity there. Possibly, yeah. I'd look at it if I was a network executive and somebody came to me with an idea that was pretty well thought out. We're able to answer a lot of the production questions that would come along with something like this, because it's a highly intensive production. It changes, one of the reasons that wrestling has been so successful for so long on television is, relatively speaking, it's inexpensive as hell to shoot. Once you start going off into the cinematic world, that changes dramatically. The amount of time it takes for pre-production, like Tony Khan doesn't even have production meetings from what I've heard, because he doesn't like confrontation. So we just don't have meetings. Well, how's that working? That to go down the cinematic road, which is one of the reasons why I kind of dismissed the light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to that with AEW, is because for a guy that doesn't even like to have production meetings to all of a sudden go, you know what, I'm going to start doing cinematic matches. Holy crap. You're making little movies every week. And that's a whole lot different than showing up and shooting wrestling matches in the ring. But it would be cool if somebody could figure it out. It's a tough one to figure out, though. It's expensive.
It's going to be interesting to see what's coming, but I'm sure we'll be talking about here. Today, we're going to talk about what was. We're talking about 1995. I can't believe this is a real thing. Disco Inferno is our topic today. Yes, we're going to talk about Glenn Gilberti, but we're also going to talk about this character, Disco Inferno, because it's always kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. From what I understand, he joins the company in 1995, and this is around the same time that you've been recruiting guys like Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko and Sabu. And you were at least at one point in 95 scouting Al Snow, but then a guy like Disco Inferno comes on your radar, and he was working the Georgia Independents, not exactly a hotbed for independent wrestling, but they are doing some really cool stuff in Georgia Independents today in 2024 that maybe not enough people are talking about. How does he arrive on your radar originally? Because it does feel like his style of, him as a performer, he is just a lot different style of performer than you would see with a Benoit or an Eddie Guerrero or that sort of thing. What was it about Disco that piqued your interest?
I don't remember how Disco arrived in WCW. I know that there's probably an assumption that everybody that came through the door and ended up in a locker room was somebody that either I hired or interviewed or was a part of the process. And a lot of times I wasn't. We had a talent budget. We had certain people in charge of recruiting new talent or bringing in new talent. They knew what the budgets were. And yes, I would sign off on things, but I don't remember who brought Disco in or how we arrived. It could have been Terry Taylor. Terry did a lot of scouting and was very interested in finding new talent. It could have been Diamond Dallas Page. It could have been any number of people that said, hey, why don't you come on in and sit with Kevin Sullivan, who probably would have been the first stop along the way. And if Kevin decided there was a place for someone like Disco, then it would end up on my desk. And if it fit within the budget, I'd take a look at it and sign off on it. So I don't know what the process was with Disco. But the other thing I want to point out, Conrad, because you're right, 95, I was looking for my cruiserweight division. I was looking for that more reality-based character, right? And Disco is way outside of that box. But just because at that time when I was actively recruiting the Benoits and the Guerreros and the Dean Malenkos and, working to get luchadors over and all that, that wasn't the only thing I was interested in. I've said it before, and I think I stole it from Dusty Rhodes. I think I really owe Dusty an apology. When I see him next time, I'll apologize to him in person. But, I think it was Dusty that said, wrestling is like a buffet. If you want a really good buffet, you've got to have a little bit of something for everybody. And yes, at that time, I was looking for my prime rib in my more reality-based characters and cruiserweights and all that. But it doesn't mean that we weren't looking for desserts too, or appetizers. And there were other characters like Disco that certainly ended up on television who didn't fall into the Eddie Guerrero type Chris Benoit category.
I want to mention this is all happening around the same time that you're getting ready to launch Nitro. So this is July of 1995, and there's another big change happening behind the scenes. Kevin Sullivan is going to take over as head booker of the creative end of WCW, replacing Ric Flair. It was written in the Torch and the Observer that Flair had some issues with you over, well, it's just written you guys were at odds over numerous things, many stemming from disagreements on booking philosophy between Flair and the Hulk Hogan camp. Does that come down to Flair believed you should have a heel champion and a babyface chasing, and Hogan being of the old school New York mentality that no, you needed a babyface champion? Or was there more at play there in July of 95?
It had nothing to do with booking philosophies and conflicts between me and Flair or Hogan and Flair, and that's just horseshit. I'm assuming it came from Dave Meltzer. It's just fabricated.
It did.
And it may have been something that Rick maybe in some way, shape, or form communicated and somehow ended up in Dave Meltzer's brain. But it's not true. The truth is, Rick was in a horrible position. He wanted to have a voice in creative because he understood the business, understands the business. He felt like he could make a big difference. But when you put, I don't care who it is, when you put a wrestler, an active performer in that position, no matter how good they are, it's not going to work. The toll that it takes on you emotionally, and Rick, you know Rick better than I do, for crying. Rick likes to be liked. Rick is the life of the party. Rick is not the guy that wants half the locker room, because half the locker room is going to lose. Half's going to win, half's going to lose. You've got to be a unique person to walk into a locker room knowing half the people in that locker room don't like you because of what they're not doing or what they are doing. And I think the stress of that, plus, there was a lot of things going on in Rick's life personally. He was commuting back and forth to Charlotte, to Atlanta, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it was. And he was wrestling full time. That's what it was. I don't want to say burnout, because I don't think Rick was burned out, but I think Rick just got to the point on a personal level, between the commute and the pressure of the job and toll that it takes on you, knowing that half the locker room is not really happy with you right in any given moment. I just think it all added up, and it was, from what I remember, it was a pretty amicable, decision. It's not like we got into a confrontation about it. Now, Rick may remember it differently, but I think it was Rick decided what was best for Rick. I decided what was best for the company, and we both agreed that handing it off to Kevin would be the best for everybody. But there was no disagreements and arguments and clash of philosophy and all that horse shit that Dave likes to make up.
Well, let's remind everybody that this is a critical point in WCW history. You've told the story many times before here that 1995 is actually the first year that WCW showed $1 profit. And here is what Wade Keller wrote at the time. There are conflicting reports coming out of WCW. However, since some say Bischoff is dead set against signing any new names until the end of the year because the budget won't allow for it. Apparently, Bischoff has figured out he has a chance to head up the first profitable year for WCW and doesn't want to jeopardize such by hiring new names. Once WCW shows a profit for 1 year, he believes he'll have a much better chance to do what's good for the company in terms of signing new names in the long run. How close is Wade's report here?
If not 100%, pretty damn close. I mean, I don't recall ever telling anybody we're not going to hire any new people because we have a chance to make money. I'm sure I brought people in 95 and hired a lot of people in 1995. But the focus in 1994, certainly in 1995, was to save money. And people, it's so funny, the narrative, and this is a WWE, this is where it started, is like, oh, he's got Ted Turner's checkbook. Ted Turner just opened a checkbook. Do whatever you want, Eric. Cactus Jack, Mick Foley called me ATM Eric, because the narrative was I was like Tony Khan. I didn't have to worry about money. I had Ted Turner's checkbook. That was the narrative. And it's actually 180 degrees opposite of what was true. What was true is I was told when I took the job, either find a way to turn this company into a profit center. It's got to make money, and either figure it out or Ted Turner's going to pull the plug. That was my first day on the job. So everything that I did, even going back to 93 when I was the executive producer, and then as I got control of the company, certainly by 1995, everything I did was to save money. I even went so far, Conrad, and I was so pissed off at the time. I'm looking at our travel budget. We're flying guys all over the place. And this was before the computers and the internet, and it became very easy to manage things. This was back when paper tickets were still the thing. Like you'd call the airline, you'd order your ticket, you'd give them your credit card number, and they would mail you a ticket. They'd mail it. And because of travel changes and production changes and booking changes, I myself, when I was a talent, this is why I focused on travel so quickly. It was like the first thing that I focused on once I got some influence. When it came to travel, I myself as a talent, they'd call me up and say, okay, we need you to come in on Tuesday. Great, send me a ticket. I'll leave Monday night. I'll be there Tuesday and I'll come home Wednesday or whatever, Thursday, Friday, whatever, however long they needed me. They'd call, Kelly Turco was the head of travel. She worked for TBS Travel. Kelly would call me and say, okay, we got a ticket. It's on its way. Look for it in the mail. Great. Ticket would arrive. Before I was ready to go on a trip, I'd get another call. Maybe from Janie Engel, who was working with Dusty, or somebody else would call me and say, oh, we changed the plans. We don't need you to come in Monday. We need you to come in Sunday. No problem. I'll come in Sunday. They would send me another ticket. Now I got 2 tickets, and they're in my name. And back at that time, if you didn't use a ticket, it was just like cash. You could take it and buy a ticket for you and your wife to go to Hawaii if you had enough of them. And I'll never forget, I've said this before, and I'm not going to mention any names, so don't even try. But I remember I'm like the potted plant in the room. I was no threat to anybody when I first got there. I think people actually felt sorry for me. That's how much of a threat I was. I don't know if that's really true, but. And I remember somebody coming up to me, pulling out a briefcase and a stack of tickets. That was at least 2 inches thick. That's maybe 2.5. 2 inches thick of tickets that were unused because of the very thing that I just described to you. Just mass disorganization. And there was probably $15,000 or $20,000 worth of tickets in that stack that this individual could use to travel anywhere he wanted for personal business. Turner never asked for the tickets back. There was no process. There was no check and balance. They just send out freaking tickets. And talent was smart enough to go, oh, well, if they're going to send it to me, I'm going to keep it so I can use it down the road. There's like no expiration dates on it. So here's what I did. I know I'm telling you a long story, but I wanted context for this. So knowing this and having experienced it myself, I thought, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Since we book the talent, meaning the travel, meaning we use the company credit card for it, I want all those frequent flyer miles not to go to the individual because they ain't paying for shit. They're getting paid to get on a plane. Why are they getting bonus miles? I wanted all those frequent flyer miles to go into an account that the company could use to offset some of our expenses. I was so excited about that idea because I knew I was probably saving, I don't know, picking numbers out of thin air, $200,000 a year in wasted travel expense. And that was important back then. When you're trying to make $1 a profit, it's not like I had to make $1 million. I was charged to make profit. And in my mind, it's like, I'm going to make a $1 profit. I don't care what I have to do. If I have to buy advertising myself somehow, I'll put it on a freaking credit card if I have to make $1 a profit. That was my mentality. So I got it approved by everybody in WCW that was involved in the process. I think Bill Shaw got it. He kind of liked the idea because he was my boss at the time. I believe he was. You know who kicked it out? Turner, Human Resources. He said, no, we can't do that. Because if you do that, then the rest of Turner is going to be expected to do that, and it's going to cause problems. Okay, well, it's going to cost you $200,000 a year to not cause problems, but go right ahead. Now, eventually, we tightened up the process, and the internet made it easier, and e-tickets made it easier. But the idea that I could just go out and hire anybody I wanted to was just so much bullshit. But it could have, going back to your question about Wade's comments, possibly towards the end of the year, when we were getting really close, I could see me deferring any hiring decisions until after the first of the year. It makes sense that I would have said that or done that.
The fellow who had the stack of tickets in his briefcase, he have a good golf game?
No.
Okay.
No.
I bet he was a pain in the ass. All right. We tried.
You're fishing, brother. You're like a little kid down in Alabama out on the pond with your little bobber and your little box of worms.
See if I can get a bite.
A big one. I get it.
Trying to get a bite. Hey, listen, let's talk about something that we do know for sure and we're able to forecast. You were talking about, would we hit profit if we signed this talent? Would we not? That was the speculation in the torch. If you want to sort of guarantee the results, well, you can get the answers on the test with our friends at Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs, and then it gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, your workouts, your sleep, and even your stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, meaning whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. And then Lumen will give you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. Lumen gives you tips to keep you on top of your health game. And your metabolic health really matters because your metabolism you should almost think of as like your body's engine that turns the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. And because your metabolism is literally at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a whole host of benefits, like easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health with each breath. Lumen's recommendations are designed to improve your pre- and post-workout fueling for better performance and recovery, so you can power through your toughest workouts and add on muscle mass. So if you want to stay on track with your health this holiday season, go to lumen.me/83 weeks to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/83 weeks for 15% off your purchase. Lumen makes a great gift too. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring today's episode. Eric, you've been rocking your Lumen for a little bit. How you liking it?
I was just going to say, I love it. And I want to thank Lumen for smarting me up. You heard the saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And that's probably true too. Apples are healthy for most people, but I am on a no carb diet. Now, every once in a while, I'll allow myself a few carbs for the right reasons. And an apple, because of the fiber in the apple, and it's good for your digestive system. Occasionally, I'll have an apple or something else it's high in fiber. But I had no idea how many carbs were in an apple. So I've got my Lumen and I experiment with stuff. I like to see how things affect my metabolism, because what people don't really understand, they think everybody's metabolism is identical, like a fingerprint. Everybody's got the same metabolism. But like a fingerprint, everybody's is unique. And what affects you, Conrad, may not affect me, and vice versa. So you got to, when you're really interested in metabolic health, and it's a rabbit hole that I just am so fascinated and grateful to be going down at this stage of my life, because it'll pay dividends, I hope. But I had no idea how many carbs were in an apple, and I was, too lazy to just research it and figure it out for myself. I just assumed it was an okay thing to have because of the fiber. So we went to Minnesota a couple of weeks ago and visited family, and I came back with a giant bag of apples. These apples were big too. I had half of one of those big apples, And then 15 minutes later, I thought, I'm going to check and see what my carbs are doing. Whoa, the carbs blew everything out of the water. It was so high in carbs that I didn't realize it. So apples are now, a once a month thing for me, or maybe twice. So it's so important when you really want to maintain your health and your metabolism to understand how different things affect you. Don't just go on the internet and take whatever advice you find on the internet and assume it's going to apply exactly to you, because we're all different. So I love Lumen. I travel with it. Like I said, I'm in the rabbit hole, man. I love it. I love knowing exactly what food is going to do to me before it does it.
Check it out right now, lumen.me/83 weeks. You'll be glad you did. So just to be clear, at the same time that Disco Inferno is under consideration, here's what's written in the Observer. Several names have been bandied about over the past week as being considered. This is all in preparation for the debut of Nitro. Among them are the Headhunters, Public Enemy, Eddie Guerrero, Al Snow, Chris Benoit, Shane Douglas, Woman, and Disco Inferno. And he even gets a tryout. Let's talk about it. It's written here in the Observer that on the July 11th edition of Center Stage's tapings, there's 740 fans, and Al Snow gets a tryout. And another fellow gets a second tryout, Disco Inferno. He's going to come out to the song Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. And it's written here in the Observer, heard he looked great and was already offered the gig. The Torch reported similarly. Glenn Gilberti received a tryout at the July 11th tapings at Center Stage. He was signed to a contract the very next day. His interviews are said to be strong. The newsletters don't mention this, but Disco's tryout match is against a young guy who we're going to know later as Canyon. My goodness, maybe we should have signed both of the cats right then. Talk to us a little bit about Disco and his tryout match. And when a tryout match goes well, is that Terry Taylor? Is that Kevin Sullivan? Whose initiative is it to start inking some paper?
If Kevin had replaced Rick at that point in time, it would have been Kevin. If Rick was still there, it would have been Rick. Because again, I keep in mind, I tried to stay away from the wrestling side of the wrestling business up until really Nitro happened, and I was more or less forced to get more involved. So if Disco had a tryout, and if Terry Taylor would have come to me, because I respected Terry's opinion when it came to this quite a bit, or if Kevin Sullivan would have come to me, or Rick would have come to me and said, hey, this kid's got it. If it was in the budget, I wouldn't have really second guessed it. I probably over-delegated in some respects. Not in this case. I think Disco was a good hire, by the way. I don't want to suggest that he wasn't. But just trying to share with people my kind of frame of mind and my approach to the business. I was more focused on the business of the wrestling business. I left the wrestling decisions up to wrestling people to determine who fit and how good they were.
Let's keep going here. We should mention that the vignettes are going to start pouring in here. That's going to be the next thing that they're going to start taping, or in vignettes for Disco Inferno. Allegedly, it's because they're setting up a feud with Johnny B. Bad. And we know ultimately Johnny B. Bad winds up joining the WWF. It doesn't wind up happening. He winds up sort of becoming married to DDP for this whole duration of that feud. It felt like it went forever. We instead get these different Disco vignettes, and the current idea allegedly is changing, where we're going to start going Monday night, 1 hour live, and then 2 hours being taped for WCW Saturday night. That's what's reported in the Observer at one point. I don't think that ever happened. Was that ever seriously considered, that we're going to do an hour live of Nitro and then record WCW Saturday night right after and then air that?
Never. I mean, when I say that, did anybody bring it up as a possibility? Perhaps, because it kind of makes sense from an economy of scale perspective. You're already there. You've got your crew there. You've got your talent there. You've already flown everybody in. It doesn't really cost that much more to tape a couple extra hours as opposed to going to a different location, flying everybody there, setting up production there. It's much more expensive, but it may have been thrown out there, but it was never seriously considered. It certainly never got to my desk.
I just find it interesting to me that, at a time where if you really are trying to hunt profit out, why keep center stage? I mean, you've said before you don't like center stage. You do have the expense of doing the 1 hour live. It's not like you're not going to do dark matches, because if you bought a ticket to that Nitro, well, I don't want to just see an hour long show. I got to have some more matches anyway. It does feel like you said the economies of scale. This would have been a home run idea. I mean, we know eventually that's what the WWF did. They do 1 week on, 1 week off, but rather than go set up a whole nother, crew and lighting and all that for center stage, in retrospect, that may have been an opportunity, Eric.
No, because you would have killed the audience. You can't go from the energy of a live, Nitro. The vision I had for Nitro was very clear in my head, at least. And now you're talking about 3 hours of wrestling. Like the first hour is going to be fantastic lights, because I put a lot of money into production for Nitro that we didn't spend on WCW Saturday Night. Keep in mind, I wasn't getting paid for WCW Saturday Night. It was a line item expense for me. My bottom line, it cost me money. I wasn't getting paid for the show. But I knew that if we did 3 hours of wrestling on a Monday night, that people would get real tired of wrestling real quick. I was fearful of that. And I knew that my Saturday night show, so you do 1 hour of Nitro, great. Now you got 2 hours of less than talent. Because if you look at a lot of the talent that was, involved in WCW Saturday Night, once Nitro started, they were not the same people that you would see on Nitro for the most part. And I believed I had to keep that separate in order to protect the Nitro brand. The vision for the brand was to be a huge live party, no taping involved, that everybody wanted to be a part of. And doing a 1 hour live, high impact, high production value show, and then following it up with 2 hours of it didn't make sense to me. May have made sense to an accountant or a data analyst, but it didn't make sense in terms of the vision and the creative that Nitro needed and utilized.
Let's talk about the creative for the character Disco Inferno. Can you describe or explain to us what the character Disco Inferno was?
I mean, you look like a parody of Saturday Night Fever. What was it, Denny? Remember the guy Denny Terrio? He used to have Denny Terrio had I would say it was like American Bandstand. It was like a disco variety show for a while, like right after disco got hot. I think
Dance Fever is what Silver
Dance
said.
Fever, that's right. Dance Fever.
How the hell do y'all know this? How do y'all know what the fuck Dance Fever is?
I was alive during that point. I'm an old fucker.
I forget that sometimes, And in my head, you're like my age, and I know you're not, but we talk so often that I forget sometimes that you're technically a grandfather now.
I'm older than dirt.
That you're technically a grandfather.
Yeah, I am, as a matter of fact.
I've always struggled with, because it does feel like when you give a guy the name Disco Inferno, don't you inadvertently put a ceiling on his upward trajectory? Like there's only so far could you see a Disco Inferno headlining Halloween Havoc?
No, but I could see Disco Inferno getting the most out of the Disco Inferno character.
Oh, he did.
For a period of time, and then something happens, something changes, and Glenn Gilberti disappears for a couple months and comes back with a whole different attitude and outlook on life, and ergo a new character. So I mean, yeah, it does kind of stigmatize you, and I think Disco really got stigmatized, but I don't think he cares. I don't think he cared then. He enjoyed that character. He was really good at it. I got a text message from Brat Sundrasian last night. I just saw it this morning. He knew we were going to be talking about disco. And at the time, Brat lived in India. He lives in Australia now. But wrestling is huge in India. Like there's 350 million WWE fans in India. right? So it was kind of a big deal. And Barat remembers Disco, and his text to me was like, hey, all the wrestling fans in India thought that Glenn was Indian. Yeah, he's got a dark complexion. He's an Italian, right? They don't know any better. And they loved the character. I mean, they loved the Disco character. So yeah, he fit, he was on the buffet. That character wasn't supposed to be taken seriously. It was more lighthearted entertainment, but Glenn could go in and wrestle. People make fun of Glenn because he's kind of an obnoxious, it's part of his gimmick. Like if you really talk to Glenn, he doesn't come off like Disco Inferno. If you get into a serious conversation with him, he's a very bright guy. And I think he saw that character. He knew that he did it well. It worked to a large degree. But he was a great performer in the ring. And one of the reasons that Paige wanted to work with him as long as Paige wanted to work with him is because Glenn could make Paige look really good.
No. DDP was working with Mark Marrow.
Oh, with Mark Marrow. Okay.
So you're going to set up Disco because he was supposed to work with Johnny B. Bad. That winds up not happening because Mark Marrow as Johnny B. Bad is married to the DDP character. So instead, I can't believe this is real. We're going to set up a feud with Alex Wright and Disco Inferno over who the better dancer is. And there's even speculation in the newsletters. Perhaps this is because Ric Flair, who was a huge supporter of Alex Wright behind the scenes and felt like, hey, this kid's got it. He's young and he's already this good this early. He's going to be great. Maybe everybody doesn't like that. And now he's going to be in a dancing feud. So I know you were shitting on AEW Creative, so I'll just be quiet here for a minute and hear about what could have been with Alex Wright and Disco Inferno.
I don't know. I think they could have had some great matches, and it was a lighthearted, comedic approach to wrestling. These are not two guys that didn't know how to wrestle. There's a reason why Ric Flair was as high as he was on Alex Wright, because Alex Wright was really, really good. Go back and watch some of Glenn's matches in WCW from 95 and 96 and 97. Set aside the obnoxious character that he was paid to represent and just look at the quality of the work in the ring. Glenn was really good for a long time. So yeah, Alex Wright, it wasn't like these are two guys that couldn't put on a great show.
I'm not arguing that, but it does make me wonder, with the benefit of hindsight, shouldn't they have both been paired with veterans, more well-established characters who maybe had more experience in the ring and in WCW? They're both young guys. So to me, maybe you let them develop and become established to the WCW audience before you put them on this collision course to see who can wiggle their ass the best.
That's a valid perspective.
Wow. I can't believe it. It's a shock. It's like every now and again when you take a look and you stick those fingers down yonder and you go, it still smells good. It's because of Mando. Mando's going to keep you stink free for 72 hours, you filthy bastard. Do your balls stink? I bet they do. And that's why you need Mando. It's whole body deodorant that's safe to use everywhere. Your pits, your balls, your thigh folds, your belly buttons, your butt crack, even your smelly ass feet. It was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was just being misdiagnosed and mistreated. It's been clinically proven to block odor all day long and control it up to 72 hours. They've got solid stick deodorant that's been formulated and powered by mandelic acid to stop your ass from stinking before it ever starts. Now they've got spray deodorant, which is perfect if you got T-Rex arms like Dave Silva. It's aluminum free and it's ideal for those hard to reach places. All their products are baking soda free and paraben free. And they come in great fresh scents like Clover Woods, like Pro Sport, like Bourbon Leather, and even Mount Fuji. Not Mr. Fuji. This is no rib. It's been clinically proven to control odor better than just a shower with soap alone. And Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, the cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice. I recommend the mini body wash and the deodorant wipes. You can also get free shipping. As a special offer for our listeners, new customers can even get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That's like 40% off your starter pack when you use our code 83weeks at shopmando.com. That's SHOPMANDO.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Eric, how you not smelling this morning? Still good?
I smell awesome this morning. I love the Mount Fuji. I love this Mando product is unbelievable. It's one of the great things about doing this podcast with you is companies send you products to sample before you endorse it. Holy smokes, that's some good stuff. I absolutely love everything in that Mando lineup. They've got a spray on now. I don't usually use that too much, but they've got a spray on it's a full body spray. So it's not only your pits and your junk that, you got to worry about, but the rest of you can get kind of ripe too if you're not careful. So I love it's a great product. Love it.
Go out of your way to check it out. That's shopmando.com and be sure to use our promo code 83weeks. So listen, we're going to sort of fast forward Disco a little bit. He's hanging around and really working as more of a comedy character. And, he's not really prominently featured a lot until 1996. And then we get to see, something that he's actually remembered fondly for. With all the criticism that exists in modern day Glenn Gilberti's timeline, people still remember when he announced that he had a new finishing hold, which he refers to exclusively as Disco Inferno's new leg hold, which I think is hilarious. He's convinced that this reverse figure 4 variation is the key for him turning things around. And here's where the comedy comes in. He can never remember how to apply it properly. So he keeps trying it and he keeps losing as a result. He's even bringing detailed notes, and then finally it clicks and he gets a win. This is pretty fun. Like, I know that there's a lot of criticism because he is, he's not towing the company line all the time with what the internet wrestling community wants to see. He lives to be a disruptor, a conversation starter, and he's perfected it because people stay pissed off or stomping their foot about what he says on the podcast or on social media. But I like this, man. I've got this new secret hold that's going to fix me, and I'm going to get all my winning ways back. Here we go. I just never put it on right. That's great.
It's got a little bit of a Chris Jericho kind of tinge to it, doesn't it? I mean, Chris was really good at coming up with those. It was almost self-deprecating in some ways, but Chris was really good about interjecting a little tongue-in-cheek humor in a lot of the stuff that he did. It probably still does. I watched him last night. He's got this big-ass cheesy smile on his face during the promo. Didn't really say anything until the very end, but he kept the cheesy look on his face even though he was talking. It was really funny. But yeah, Disco, I don't know whose idea that was, if it was Glenn's or if somebody gave it to him, but it's funny as hell. And that was his role. He was a great performer. He could wrestle like crazy in a ring, but his character was funny and comedic and self-deprecating. And that always works with the audience.
I want to mention that, not that I'm trying to throw stones, Jericho did do a great job of that in 1997 and specifically in 1998. Disco's doing it here in 96. And believe it or not, for several months, he disappeared in 1997. Here's what the Observer said. During the show, Jacqueline challenged any male wrestler. Best bet is Disco Inferno, who's about the only guy who can get away with it. Now, the Observer the next week would say Disco was fired on March the 4th when he refused to do a program, which would have ended with him putting over Jacqueline in the singles match at Uncensored. The vast majority of the wrestlers were totally in support of Disco on that one and felt that putting over a woman in a singles match was a career killer. Wade Keller added a little more color here, and he says that Disco refused to do so and was fired as a result. There was an exchange of heated words between Disco and management. Bischoff fired him for quote-unquote breach of contract since he refused to do what he was told. The speculation already is that Disco will show up as Honky Tonk Man's new find. Honky hinted he'd be producing a clone of himself to pick up the Intercontinental title where he left off. Of course, we know Honky winds up taking over Billy Gunn for a little bit and calling him Rockabilly. That was a miss, but eventually we get the New Age Outlaws. This is something that I remember reading about maybe at the height of the internet wrestling community's growth period in 1997. What do you remember? What really happened with Disco refusing to put over Miss Jackie? And were there really heated words? Were the wrestlers really behind Disco? What can you tell us about this?
I don't know how the locker room felt. I would imagine they were supportive. I don't think I'd be surprised if they weren't. Heated words, I don't remember if they were heated or not. I think Glenn's not he didn't yell. He would tell you how he felt, but he was professional about it. He stood his ground, and so did I. So yeah, I fired him. I've always, look, when you get hired, to me, my perspective, when you get hired as a talent, your job is to perform to the best of your abilities, the creative that is designed, approved, and then given to you to go out and perform. I never understood. Now, I understand people having issues with things, and if you want to talk about it, if there's a way to compromise, if perhaps somebody just needs to understand the big picture, no problem with any of that. In fact, I think the more of that, the better, because it enables a talent to really understand and see the big picture as opposed to just going out and doing something for one night. And I think you get a much better performance long-term out of your talent if they see the bigger picture and at least understand why. But once I go through the explanation and explain the why of it, that's it. Your job is to do what you've been asked to do. Compromise? Sure. Ways to make it a little easier? Sure. Ways to make it better? Absolutely. Bring it on. But when somebody just says, no, I can't do that, I won't do that, that's a different conversation. And that's the conversation we had. Glenn was determined he wasn't going to do what I had asked him to do, and I was determined not to let it slide. So yeah, I terminated him. Because it's a slippery slope, Conrad. What if you don't? What if Disco comes to me, and no offense to Glenn Gilberti at all, because I like Glenn and have respect for Glenn. But Glenn was not Hulk Hogan. Glenn was not Ric Flair. Right? Glenn was a new kid on the block who was getting an opportunity. And if when given creative that everybody was involved in, not just me, I didn't create it, Kevin Sullivan, whoever else was involved in it, we give that to Disco and he says, no, I won't do that. If I would have let that slide, how do you think the other 102 people that work for me as talent are going to respond the next time they see something that for whatever reason they just don't like? That's the leadership part. When you have to make tough decisions, I didn't want to fire Glenn. I like Glenn. I thought Glenn was a great performer, but you just can't let that one slide. That's a no-fly zone. When someone says, no, I understand it. I know why you're doing it, but I don't want to. It's the end of that conversation.
What did Jackie think about all this?
Jackie was quiet. I'm sure she talked to Kevin because her and Kevin were pretty close. Kevin is the one that I think brought her in, and he was very, very supportive of her. But Jackie was very quiet. We spoke casually, in a friendly way as we pass each other or see each other at television, but I never really had a conversation with her about this.
It feels like she was way ahead of her time. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah, and she was a pro. She was tough, but she was also really a pro, soft-spoken, very professional. I enjoyed working with her.
I should mention, and here's where, as a friend of mine says, which is especially appropriate for me, you can tell with the way I sound, here's where the snot thickens on this whole Disco Jackie story. Do you know their history? You may not even know this. Disco, the real life Glenn Gilberti's first break in wrestling was on Memphis TV 4 years prior, where he channeled his inner Andy Kaufman and proclaimed himself to be the intergender champion. And he feuded with Miss Jackie in Memphis. So maybe.
So somebody stole that idea.
They had worked together. They had done it before. They were familiar with each other. And my only question is, the only thing that makes sense, because I've never asked Glenn about this. Do you think he dug his heels in because, hey, Memphis TV is one thing. This is national TV. This is, at that point in 1997, the biggest promotion in the world. I don't mind doing it in the Memphis market for the Memphis people to see on TV. Okay. But the biggest wrestling company in the world, bigger than the WWF at this point, I don't know if I want to become known as that guy. Knowing now that they had done it before, does that change your opinion on anything?
Not at all. In fact, if anything, if I would have known that, I would have been more insistent upon it, because I know that since they had worked together previously, the quality of the match was probably going to be pretty good.
Positioning on the card, listen, I know that people are going to throw rocks at you after this, because I'm sure that somebody stroked that old Fu Manchu once upon a time and says, doesn't work for me, brother. Or he hits you with one of the famed, and then what? And where do we go from there? What about next week? But when Disco refuses to do a job, she's shown the door. Is this production has its privileges? Like, the show can carry on. We can live without a Disco Inferno. But if I don't draw the line right now and make an example out of someone, and I know that's a terrible way to talk, but sometimes when you are concerned that, hey, are Sean Waltman and Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, are they getting too far out over their skis? Do we have any dissension in the locker room? Are people being lax about the rules and puffing their chest out just a little bit and straying away from the company vision? I need to tighten the reins. I don't want to fire one of those guys. I need them. That's a big story. Maybe I can make an example out of this guy and business still be here the next day. Does that even cross your mind in that era, or are you not thinking that way?
No. I was I understand why you would ask the question and why people would ask it as well. Kind of a big difference. One is Hulk did have creative control. So if Hulk had started stroking his Fu Manchu and said, it didn't work for me, brother, then that's a different conversation under those circumstances. Keep in mind, he never did that until the Sting thing at Starrcade. But I would have had, to your point, I would have had to treat that differently. But I didn't think about it within the context of Scott Hall or Sean Waltman or anybody else. I did, as I said to you a few moments ago, recognize that if I let Glenn Gilberti have creative control after he'd been with the company for 12 months or whatever it was, then I would completely lose control of the rest of the locker room. That I did consider. I didn't even consider it very long. It's like I knew it. I didn't have to think about it. So I understand why you would ask the question, but it's not really applicable here. This was a young talent. We wanted to do something. It was Kevin Sullivan's creative, not mine. He had a reason for doing it, and the talent said no. There's not a whole lot more to think about it. Yes, I made an example out of him. I guess you could look at it that way, just like I made out of Honky Tonk when he refused to do something, or I would have made out of anybody else who refused to do something. It just flat out said no. After the explanation was there, after the bigger picture conversation was there, and if they still refuse to do it, then there's nothing really to talk about. What are you going to do?
Well, I got to ask you about this story because it came up in both the Observer and the Torch. The Observer came out on March 31st. The Torch came out on April 5th. Here's what Wade said. Disco Inferno has a no-compete clause that lasts well into the summer, even though he was fired, so he probably is unable to sign with the WWF for now. Bischoff told Disco when he fired him that he would never get another job that paid him $80,000 a year.
I don't think I did, but maybe. First of all, was I paying him $80,000 a year?
I just love the idea that you're like, not only are you fired, I want you to know you'll never have it as good as you had it right here, you dumbass.
I may have said that or implied it. Could have said it. But $80,000? I think I was paying him more than $80,000 a year. $75,000 was like power plant money. I was pretty cheap back then, but I think I paid him more than that.
According to the payroll data that has been compiled over the years by Chris Harrington and David Bixenspan, he's close to, I think, what you were paying him that year. We know eventually he's going to come back in September, but man, I'm sure he was thinking as he's working independence and not able to go work for the WWF, I need to save some money. It's too bad he didn't have Rocket Money back then. Rocket Money will find any subscription that you forgot about, maybe some that you're actually paying twice for. I know my wife and I were. And I bet if I was to ask you, can you name every single subscription you have? You couldn't do it. I know I couldn't. It turns out like more than 74% of people have at least something they've forgotten about. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. You can see all of your subscriptions in one place and know exactly where your money is going. And for any of you who don't want one of these subscriptions anymore, you find one you don't want, well, that's easy. Couple taps, Rocket Money's going to cancel it for you. They do the rest. They do all the hard work for you. They'll even try to negotiate your bills lower for you, sometimes even saving you up to 20%. They automatically scan your bills to find opportunities to save, and then you can ask them to negotiate for you. They'll deal with customer service. And their dashboard at Rocket Money gives you a clear view of your expenses across all of your accounts. You can create a personalized budget with custom categories, all in an effort to help you keep your spending on track. You can even get alerts if bills increase in price, maybe, or if there's even unusual spending activity. And my wife hates this one. We get a notification if we're going over budget. The new goals feature automatically even helps you save money for you without you having to think about it. Whether your goal is to pay off credit card debt or put money away for a house or just build your savings, Rocket Money makes it easy. And they've got over 5 million users who've saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when they use all the app's features. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/83 weeks. That's rocketmoney.com/83 weeks. rocketmoney.com/83 weeks. Let's talk about Nitro on September 22nd. It's in West Valley City, Utah. We've got 7,923 fans there. Yes, this is the particular show where Goldberg made his debut, but that's not what we're talking about. Disco Inferno is back, and he wins the TV title from Alex Wright. He goes for a crossbody block, but Disco winds up on top for the pin. And after the match, Miss Jackie comes out, confronts Disco, and threatens to tell Disco and tell why Disco has been gone for 6 months. Disco gets hot. Her even bringing this up. So here you go. This goes over a lot of the head of a lot of the viewers at home. This feels like it's playing towards the internet wrestling community who knew what really happened. Why did you bring Disco back? Why did you put him over Alex Wright for the TV title when he comes back and he's still programmed immediately with Miss Jackie? Talk me through this.
I think he saw the error of his ways, and we had a conversation, and I made the decision to bring him back. There was value in Disco Inferno. I enjoyed his position on the roster, and I think Kevin Sullivan did too. So it wasn't like he didn't have any value. He had a lot of value. Just couldn't tolerate refusing to do what we asked. And I think enough time had probably gone by. Disco had some different thoughts about how he approached it, and I had some different thoughts about how I could have approached it, and we reconciled. That's about it.
Well, we asked, hey, do you think you could have ever seen a Disco Inferno headline a Halloween Havoc? Well, he faces Miss Jackie at Halloween Havoc at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas. I can't believe this is real. Miss Jackie wins. It's a non-title match. Disco does the job in 9 minutes and 39 seconds. Meltzer would say, conceptually, this was a disaster, but the work of both involved, which not making it salvageable, was at least enough to make it not the worst match on the show. Disco's going to do a lot of running here. Eventually, though, they do some moves. Jacqueline scores a pin using a schoolboy, or I guess in this case, maybe it's a schoolgirl, and it's a quarter star. But now a lady has beat your television champion on pay-per-view. Were any of the old veterans in the back upset about this, or did they understand the purpose behind this?
I don't know if they were or not. Nobody said anything to me. I'm sure there were some people that thought it was just a bad idea. and had strong opinions about it, but nobody really said too much about it. It was an entertaining match, and it solved a lot of issues. Like I said, Glenn came back, had a different opinion. I maybe had a little different opinion. He eventually did what we asked him to do months before, and then we moved on from there. And it was still an entertaining match.
I know that
maybe not the Dave Meltzer, but here's the thing about Dave. If Dave puts you over, you know you're going down the wrong path. If Dave thinks what someone is doing is great, chances are that person is not someone that's going to be a star. Dave Dave uses, what was the term that I saw the other night? I can't think of the term that he used, but Dave likes to think that he really has his finger on the pulse. And it's exactly the opposite. The guy here, he's clueless. He's absolutely clueless. So when Dave said, I gave it a 1/4 star, it's like, who the fuck cares what Dave Meltzer gave it? If he gave you 4 stars, you've got something to worry about. You're one-dimensional.
Let me ask you about Miss Jackie. I said, were any veterans upset, or did they understand, the purpose behind what we were doing? I guess my question is, what was the purpose of this? And I know that I'm going to sound real Hulk Hogan-ish when I say this, but we've all heard that his comeback was, and then what? Like, where do we go from there? And where we went from here is 1 week later, we're going to have a dark match at Nitro in Philadelphia where Disco beats Jackie. And that's it. She had one televised match in WCW, and it was at Halloween Havoc. But it's not like this starts her for some big push on the women's side of things, or she's not going to continue to wrestle men. We know that, a couple of years later, 2 years later, Chyna's going to become the Intercontinental Champion, and Jeff Jarrett comes to WCW. But we're not really seeing any more matches from her in WCW. Where was Kevin Sullivan on this angle? I know that he had a soft spot for her and was a big fan of her and made her a part of his presentation, but it doesn't really go anywhere. Why not?
I don't know. Could have been any number of things. And one of the things that Jackie wasn't good at was the mic.
Yeah.
That was a soft spot for her. That was part of it. There wasn't a lot of women out there in the marketplace at the time. So it was also, how do you push and continue to build somebody when there really aren't that many opponents out there to build her with? That could have easily been a part of it. I don't think it was any one thing. And I think this whole thing with Disco and Jackie, Kevin wanted to do something. Disco refused. I fired him. He wanted to come back. I said, great, come back. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to pick up right where you left off. He did. She, for whatever reason, any combination of them, didn't really go anywhere. It's not like this match was designed for her to take her to the next level. That wasn't it. Jackie was tough. She was credible. She was fun to watch. She was intense. That's what that match was supposed to be. Disco was a comedic character. I don't see fundamentally why it would be so hard for someone, creatively speaking, to look at a comedic character, a heel, that plays a chicken shit as a heel, being so confused as to why we would want to have a woman like Jackie, who could probably kick the shit out of most guys in real life, beat that character. I don't know. It's not like her world was about to change when that happens. Clearly it didn't, but it was never the intent of the match. It was just, let's have an entertaining match. He said no. He came back and said, okay. And then we did it. And he went on to do other things, and she didn't. There's no more to it than that, really.
Disco eventually winds up losing the television title to Saturn, and then he gets mixed up with Alex Wright again, this time as a tag team. Do you remember their tag team name, Eric?
No, I can't wait to hear it, though.
The Dancing Fools. And eventually, Magnum Tokyo, from Ultimo Dragon's gym, has his name flipped to Tokyo Magnum. you know why it was flipped? Did it sound too close to Magnum TA?
I don't know why. I don't. I wish I did. I wish I had all the answers to these questions because I feel silly that I don't. Then I remember this is 25 fucking years ago and a lot of stuff I wasn't involved with anyway. So I don't know.
Well, listen, I know when you get confused, sometimes you take a Blue Chew. What happens after you take a Blue Chew, Eric?
Oh, the blood rushes to my head.
Which one?
And I get unconfused really quickly. I know exactly what I want to do next. If there was any confusion in my mind before I took a Blue Chew, the Blue Chew clears all that up within minutes, really.
Use the promo code 83weeks at bluechew.com if you haven't already. They've got all the information you need there about how Blue Chew is an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in chewable form. You'll consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door, and it's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Blue Chew wants men to be rock hard. That's what they told me. That's the mission. They will not stop until every man is bricked up like a brick house, until every tent is pitched, until every rod is raised. Discover your options at bluechew.com. Eric, do you want to show everybody how chubbed up you are? I know you told us right before we went live that you would shoot up a Blue Chew and afterwards you were going to go 2 out of 3 falls with Mrs. B. Do you just want to show us Eric B bricked up right here?
Yeah, sure. Hold on one second.
No. Get off of that shot. What are you doing going to him? Don't do that. Here's the deal. Listen up. You can try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code 83weeks at checkout. Just pay the $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com. The promo code is 83weeks and you'll receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast and Eric's Wiener. Hey, I'm fascinated with this insistence on, because when you really think about these characters in WCW, they change a little bit. We started with Alex Wright, Das Wunderkind doing the silly dance. We know eventually he becomes Berlin. It's a whole new presentation. Disco's character evolves a little bit too. He goes from the dancing fool who's putting people over to the dancing fool who's winning to the dancing fool who's the television champion but can still lose to women. But now he's a tag team in the Dancing Fools. And then Tokyo Magnum becomes a thing. But maybe the best part of his career, and I've heard Disco say this on his podcast, the highlight he considers of his career was when he was reconstituted NWO as Scott Hall's lackey. What'd you think of him playing the lackey role? I mean, that, to me, him being the second for Scott Hall, that checks a lot of boxes. I dig that.
It worked primarily because Disco had fun with it.
Yes.
He enjoyed it. He understood the role and he saw the opportunity to be a piece of the puzzle, a piece of a much greater puzzle that was really working. And he did an excellent job at it.
He does a great feud with Conan. And one of the things they're talking about in this era is how often do they play in that Conan video? Because Conan had a music video. Disco gets annoyed by that, recreates the video, but with himself all over it. Even Dave Meltzer had to say it was pretty funny. And thanks to Disco, I now know all of the words. It's over on YouTube. We can't link it here. WWE does not want us to show it to you. They've had a lot of issues at times with us posting things, whether they were on Peacock or the network or even social. So we can't play it for you.
Yeah, because we don't want to promote your shit.
It would be terrible if we sent traffic there and encouraged people to enjoy your products. We'll stop that shit right now.
What's wrong with you people?
It's crazy. But what I really love, and I've never forgotten it, is the way Disco Inferno is doing his translation of Conan's music video. Oil of Olay, all day, every day. I don't know why it's funny, but it just is. What'd you think of this, Eric?
It's great. And that's a perfect example of Disco's comedic abilities and the way he took that character very seriously. It was great stuff. He's a very, very smart, creative guy. He doesn't get nearly enough credit because that obnoxious, overbearing Disco character still resonates with people today and overshadows who Glenn Gilberti really is. Although he can still be fairly obnoxious, but in a different way. I appreciate it. I respect his obnoxiousness. I kind of have a little bit of that my own, but people still, they think about the Disco Inferno character and it's always dismissive, but he was really, really a great performer and kind of fearless. Take the thing with Jackie out of the equation. That was a different issue, but for a talent to embrace the way Disco embraced, not only embrace the character, but come up with ideas to make that character better and more entertaining. It takes a lot of balls to do that. You have to be kind of a fearless performer. You have to be the type of person that's not afraid to go out and make an ass of yourself. And I think if you talk to any really good actor or actress, one of the things that they learn along the way is to separate who you really are from who the character needs to be. And it's not easy for people to do. And I think when someone like Glenn looks at it, he's going to be somebody's lackey. It's not exactly the most, exciting opportunity that a lot of people would get because they don't want they don't want to look silly. They don't want to look less than. But if you get somebody that realizes that's not who they really are, and they just want to have a great time portraying that character, that's magic. And I think that's where Disco's head was at. That's why I have respect for him. You know who else has reminded me of that?
Who?
And this is really going to be, oh boy, you think I get heat just burying Tony Khan and shit, but AJ Styles had to go through much the same thing. When he was Ric Flair's protege. AJ hated that.
Yeah.
Absolutely hated it. When I hooked him up in the Claire Lynch story, oh my God. He hated it, but he did it. He worked really hard at it. He committed to it. He learned how to become a character, how to separate AJ Styles, the amateur wrestler, Georgia boy, perfect family man. And I say this, and with just more respect than I can convey here, a really good human being. And now I'm asking him to go off and do things that are 100% contrary to who he really was. And he figured it out, and he did it. He didn't want to do it, but he really poured himself into it. And you can think whatever you want of that storyline or being Ric Flair's protege. But for a young talent to be put into a position where they have to make a choice and learn how to embrace a character that is so not them, you're on your way to becoming a great performer when you can learn how to do that, as opposed to letting your own ego and your own sense of who your character should be stop you dead in your tracks, like Disco's did with Jackie initially. That's not how you grow as a character. It's not how you grow professionally, certainly telling people no. But certainly as a character, if you really want to develop your character and learn how to become more than the one or two-dimensional character that you happen to be in any given moment, you're going to have to give up you're going to have to give up your ego and do things that are contrary to who you really are. And when people reach that point as a performer, I really, really admire them for it, because it's not easy to do. And it's what keeps people from being great performers. Most of the time it's their own ego.
There's not much to the Dancing Fools. So Alex and Disco break up as a tag team, and Disco's going to be back in the cruiserweight division. He'll have some fun matches with Juventud and Billy Kidman. Do you think if there was going to be a persona switch for Disco, it would have been in this era? Like, this seems like the time when it's like, hey, he's been the TV champ. He's wrestled the ladies. He's been in the cruiserweight division. We tried him as a tag team. If he was going to get a fresh coat of paint, as Bruce would call it, this would probably be it.
You would think, going back, because it was such a transition too creatively, there was more emphasis on, the reality aspect. The NWO thing was working, all eyes were kind of on that type of presentation, a more reality-based presentation. That's where things were going. And yeah, you would think that if there was going to be a change, that this would have been it.
You know, there's teases that he might join the Wolfpack. Of course, that never comes to fruition. The highest profile thing he ever did is probably the run-in at Starrcade 98, where Goldberg's streak is going to come to an end. Well, Goldberg's streak came to an end thanks to Bam Bam Bigelow, Scott Hall, and the Disco Inferno, which is kind of fun. And clearly, you know, the NWO were rock stars. So even today, the real life Glenn would say being associated with them is the highlight of his career. I mean, they were the toast of the town everywhere they went. But his greatest success probably happens when he and Vince Russo become fast friends. That's where he's going to enjoy being tag team champ and cruiserweight champ. And they're going to start doing the chart buster finish for Disco, which is basically the Stone Cold Stunner. What'd you think of that when all of a sudden the most over wrestler in the entire industry is using the move, and now Disco is going to use it on WCW programming? What'd you think of that?
I don't even remember it. So obviously not very much. I mean, I never really got, again, I say these things and it's people are going to forget when it comes to wrestling and Eric Bischoff is way more interested in the business of the wrestling business than he is sometimes of the nuance of the wrestling business. And nuance might be somebody using somebody else's finish. First of all, you see it so freaking often. It's not like it stands out to me. I mean, my God, it's everywhere you look, multiple times throughout one show. And maybe it's more so now than it was back then. So maybe it should have stood out to me more, but it just wasn't the type of thing that captured my imagination in any given moment. I didn't really think about it too much.
Eric, we were late getting started today, and I know you've got a hard out. You've got a big call with a big-time player in Hollywood in 24 minutes. So we got a bunch of questions. I want to rattle through as many as we can, as fast as we can, but there's 2 more pieces of business. So we'll try to exercise brevity here for a few minutes, Eric. Rob wants to know, where does signing and pushing Disco rank on your list of top career regrets? One of the primary reasons I didn't regularly tune into WCW, terrible. I've never heard this before. There's never been a performer who was so bad it would make me not watch the whole show. This can't make the list, right, Eric?
Yeah, no, sorry, Robert. Man, I'm sorry I lost you as a viewer, but nobody noticed. So,
wow, there it is. Jason says, I've always heard that Sting was a big fan of Disco's work and that he's the one who went to Eric and got Disco his job back. Is that true?
Could have been. Sting was an honest broker, and Steve and I knew each other well enough that he knew when maybe I was being a little firmer on something that I needed to be, and he would try to talk to me. It's how Lex got back. Same thing.
RCS 88 says, was the Disco character a better fit in the 90s of the WWF? Disco had a tryout in the WWF before coming to WCW. You know, I could totally see that in the era of, you know, there's trash men and all these different occupational, there's a clown. I mean, a guy who's obsessed with Disco right out of that 70s show before that 70s show was a thing. I can see it in the WWF, but the realism of the NWO, I think, is what made us all have a little pause.
Yeah. And I mean, really, if you think about it, if Glenn would have gotten the opportunity in WWF back in 94, 95, that he got with WCW, his career trajectory might have been vastly different because he really was a perfect character for, you know, late mid 90s, early 90s, mid 90s, even into late 90s before the Attitude Era. He was really a perfect candidate for WWF.
T-Gunk 420 says, crazy to me when people trash him as a performer. He knew his role. He worked within his limits. He maximized his TV time. I agree. I think history has been unkind to Disco Inferno. Go rewatch the stuff and take a look. And Riff Fox over on Twitter actually points out, the Wrestling Observer voted Disco Inferno the best gimmick in 1995. Is it safe to say Dave Meltzer admires Disco Inferno? I didn't know that. How about that? Best gimmick in 95.
Wow. No wonder his career really didn't go anywhere. See what I said? As soon as Dave puts you over, it's a kiss of death.
Great question here from Big Bot Man. Why is Disco the fall guy for critics like Bischoff, Bully Ray, Cornette, Conan, and Booker T? They all usually share similar ideas, but only one modern talent will publicly take offense is DI. But the only one modern talent will publicly take offense is DI. Okay, so they're saying these guys are all kind of saying the same thing. They all have similar critiques of AEW. And I think a lot of this goes back to maybe 6 years ago. Cody Rhodes clapped back on something that Disco had said about these kids today and the way they're working or the bumps they're taking or what have you. Cody just sort of blasted him on social media, and now it does feel like it's become the in vogue thing. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think maybe Glenn invites it. You know, I mean, I don't know. I can't explain it, to be honest with you. I'm not sure I understand. I understand the question about Disco, but how it relates to AEW, I guess I missed that in the question.
Well, he has critiques, and it feels like whenever you see someone on the AEW side of things come out and speak against anything anyone's saying that's critical in the podcast space, they might not say it about Bully Ray. They might not say it about Booker T. They might not say it about Eric Bischoff or Jim Cornette, but they find a way to say it about Disco Inferno.
Because he sells it.
Okay.
They get attention. That's the internet. Everybody they're needy people. The people who are obsessed with social media are obsessed because they're very needy people. They need attention desperately. So they say and do dumb things just to get attention. And Disco entertains it. He throws it right back at them. So they have a friend in the IWC. They get attention the minute they start saying something about Disco. I ignore them. Cornette probably ignores them. Dave Meltzer blocks them. I just laugh at the shit. And I get a whole folder on my phone of like stupid shit that people say that I can have fun with when I do a Wise Choices or bring something up here. So yeah, I enjoy it. I have fun with it, but some people don't.
We got a live question here from our live studio audience from adfreeshows.com. Eric Green wants to know, was there ever anyone that saw Disco being a fit and working behind the scenes at some point? There are other things besides just being in the ring.
I didn't then, that's not something that I thought about back then, but I can certainly see it now. I mean, people don't realize how talented Glenn Gilberti is. He may be obnoxious. You may not like the way he says things to you or about you necessarily, but if you just get past all the bullshit and listen to him and try to see things the way he's discussing them, you'll find that he's a pretty smart guy that understands the fundamentals of the business better than most people that are in it today, or at least as much as most people are in it today.
Is there one match that stands out to you about Disco Inferno as perhaps your favorite?
Yeah, doing a job for Jackie put a smile on my face because I am that guy. I am. Every once in a while, that dark side comes out. I'm just kidding. No, there's not. He had a lot of great matches. Disco was a great supporting cast member. And there are probably too many great matches. If you go back and look at Disco's matches, Glenn Gilberti's matches as the Disco Inferno, try to pick it apart. Compare it to what you saw last night, for example, and pick it apart. I'll be interested in hearing that.
I would encourage people to go check out Bash at the Beach 1996. That's Dean Malenko and Disco Inferno. I also enjoyed Disco Inferno versus Saturn that happened in November of 97. But even according to Cage Match, the highest rated match that he had, from the fans at least, was a triangle tag team match. Alex Wright and Disco against Billy Kidman and Rey Mysterio Jr. And the third tag team was Jindrak and O'Hare. This was at Halloween Havoc 2000. So those are some Disco Inferno matches you might want to check out. But something that you probably need to check out, since we've been recording today, Eric, this news came to light that one of the shows that AEW had advertised and had tickets on sale for, coming up on December 7th, in Columbus, Ohio, has now been canceled, Eric.
Whoa.
And the statement says, unfortunately, the event organizer has had to cancel your event. You don't need to do a thing. We'll issue a refund to the original method of payment used at the time of purchase. As soon as funds are received from the event organizer, it should appear on your account within 14 to 21 days. So yeah, Collision, which was supposed to happen on Saturday, December 7th, which is the same day as the SEC championship. I know that because I'm a football nut. It's no more. Not a good sign when we're canceling TV tapings 3 weeks out, Eric. That's bad news.
There's probably, I would imagine there's something else going on there. Like maybe Collision's going to go away, which it probably should. I mean, I can get as many viewers on a YouTube show as they can on Collision.
Oh, God.
So it's not necessarily doing anybody any good, including AEW. It would be better if they didn't have it and just focus their resources, their human resources, creative. Focus on your core business. Focus on making Dynamite great. You don't need a Collision show. So I hope they're putting it out of its misery because it's embarrassing. When you see the numbers and they're drawing 175,000 viewers or 200,000 viewers, it's like, what the fuck are we doing? This is not a good idea. So hopefully it's a reflection on a restructuring of AEW and TBS, and I'm excited about that.
I am too. I'm going to be an optimist. I'm going to hope that they're changing something up and we're going to get some new exciting stuff in January. Like if there's no shows being advertised or promoted, got to think something's up their sleeve. I can't wait to see it. I know we'll talk about it here. I'm pulling for AEW. I know you are too. Their success would be great for the wrestling business, but it is interesting to see how they sort of march through all of this. And I wanted to ask you before we get going here, you know, listen, we don't talk about politics here on the show at all as a rule. We're your escape from that sort of thing. But I've seen a lot of conversation over the last week or so about the influence of what some people have called the mainstream media. I think I've decided to call it national news, AKA just what's coming through the television on the alphabet soup of networks, whether it's CNN or Fox News or ABC or MSNBC or whatever, all of the different networks. People are now realizing that the influence through non-traditional streams, whether that was Joe Rogan's podcast or Twitter so now there's this big debate. And I think it's become very apparent that more people are consuming the non-traditional media. So when people use the phrase mainstream media, mainstream inherently means the thing that people are seeing the most of, to me. Does this bring into question at all what's happening this weekend? Because this weekend, the former king of pay-per-view, Mike Tyson himself, is having what most people will believe will be his last fight at 58 years old. And it's not on pay-per-view, Eric. It's on Netflix against Jake Paul. Do you think we're seeing a shift? I mean, is there more at play here?
In terms of how we consume entertainment and
the whole model being blown up, like in terms of, like, I had conversations with people in TNA a few years ago, and they really did believe at the time, and this was a different regime, that the key to their success was being on a bigger station. That's not it. I didn't think it was it then, and I think what happened in this most recent election is proof that that's not it. Take a look at AEW now. All due respect, everybody knows I do shows with 3 AEW employees and love them to death, and I go to every AEW show I can. I want them to be successful. I'm pulling for those hardworking men and women. But AEW is competing with TNA now more than they are WWE. And they're on TBS. They're on TNT. You can't find many bigger stations to be on than where they're at. I just don't think that's the answer. I think if people want to see it, they'll go out of their way to see it. And I think that that's been proven now, not just in professional wrestling, but in political elections, just as far as sphere of influence and things. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how wrestling continues to evolve, because pay-per-view has certainly evolved. The undisputed kings of pay-per-view for all of the 80s and 90s were Vince McMahon and Mike Tyson. And now neither of them are really doing pay-per-view anymore. With that in mind, what do you expect this weekend in that spectacle, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson?
I'm excited to find out, how many people watch it. I think it's fascinating. I'm actually associated with one of the people that put that fight together. And I'm going to ask him about some inside information regarding the deal and how many people are going to be watching it and all that. I'll have access to some of that directly from the source as opposed to, reading it peripheral media. But I'm fascinated by it. Because I found out it's a sanctioned fight. I mean, this is a sanctioned fight. This is not an exhibition. Solely an exhibition. It's like, are these guys really going to fight or not? It's one of the things I love about, look, when wrestling for me, when it works for me as a viewer, right, as a fan, or even as a producer, wrestling works when I find that sweet spot where the audience knows this is all scripted entertainment. None of this stuff is real, except for that. That wasn't supposed to happen. These two guys really got heat. That's the sweet spot. That's the way wrestling worked originally. People weren't really sure how legit it was. Some of it just didn't make sense. But these two guys really do hate each other. I'll have fun watching the rest of that stuff, but I want to see these two guys kick each other's ass. That's the magic moment in professional wrestling. That's why the NWO worked. That's why Mr. McMahon and Steve Austin and Mike Tyson worked, because it was believable. They were, Doink the Clown's over here, but these two guys want to kill each other. That's the magic. And that's sometimes too often, frankly, the magic that's missing. Now, in this case, we're talking about Paul and Tyson. I am not sure as I sit here whether that's going to be an exhibition, we'll call it a work, or is it going to be legit? And the fact that I don't know is what's going to force me to watch it. I won't be able to not watch that because I have to know. And even when the fight's over, I still may not know. But that's the magic. And to your point, though, about AEW, they're not successful. They're on the biggest. Look, if they would learn how to produce a show, if they learn how to, all the things I've talked about, if they could right that ship and do the right things, the fact that they're on a major platform is still a very, very important thing, because you don't make it to Netflix until you've established yourself on linear television, or unless you're a movie or something like that. But it's not like any company, AEW or any other, MLW, whoever, TNA, none of them are going to make it to Netflix or any meaningful streaming platform until they've established the brand. Then perhaps move up to a major, streaming platform like Netflix. But, AEW, if they put AEW on Netflix tomorrow night, it's not going to do any better because it's the nature of the product. It's not the nature of the platform. TBS is just fine. It's still a major cable outlet.
I'm not arguing that TBS is fine. I'm just saying, guys, I don't know how often we've said it before, but I just want to say it in a loud and clear voice. If you're an independent wrestling promoter and you think the next level for your business is to get on television, it's not necessary. It's not required. There are YouTubers who have much bigger followings and have much bigger viewership. Like, the world is yours. You just got to go create something compelling people want to see. The platform will not save you, is the point I'm trying.
Will not save you. I absolutely agree with you on that. And Conrad, I know I've got to go, and you probably do too, but do you remember back when the rumor of AEW and Turner was just surfacing?
Yes.
I don't know if you remember this or not, but you asked me about it. This was before the deal was confirmed. And it may have, I'm paraphrasing the question, obviously, but it was something along the lines of, you got this new company, AEW, what would you do? What network would you want to be with? And I specifically said, I remember this, I wouldn't put my money on television. I wouldn't build a company around cable television. I would take whatever resources I had and I would start out on a streaming platform. I would look to the future, not to the past. And even 5 years ago, almost 6 now, 5.5, everybody knew that streaming was the future. I think, and again, it wouldn't have mattered because the product is still the product. That's the problem. But I think, as you talked about just a moment ago, if you've got a vision for a wrestling company, if you're a promoter, you've got the resources, you've got the passion, and you want to build a wrestling company, listen to what Conrad just said. Don't think a network is going to make it work for you. And there are other alternatives. And I absolutely agree with you, Conrad. That's a great observation. You're 100% right. But you have to, and you also said it towards the end, you have to have a compelling product that people want to watch.
That's what TNA did. TNA not that long ago was dead. Nobody was talking about TNA. No buzz, couldn't give the fucking tickets away. They turned it around. They created a product that people want to see now. They're selling a lot of tickets. More people are paying attention. My point is, the holy grail is not the platform. That's not what's going to make or break your success. What's going to make or break your success is, do people want to see it? And if they want to see it, they'll pay for pay-per-view. They'll sign up for Netflix. They'll find out what time you're on TBS. They'll watch the shit on YouTube. They'll buy an app. They will find you if it's compelling. And speaking of compelling, I can't believe this is real. As I'm recording today, I'm surfing through social media to see if there's any breaking news. Eric, you popped up on Fox News and Fox Sports. What the hell's going on?
Yeah, I just saw that this morning too. I'm doing the MLW show, One Shot show in New York on December 5th. And they've got a great team of people there at MLW. They got a great PR team. They called me the other day and said, "Hey, Fox News would like to talk to you. Are you available?" It's like, yeah, what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? And we did the interview over the phone. It was great. But I'm really excited about it. I'm having so much fun with it, and we've just barely gotten started, but there's some really talented people there. Court, former writer, WWE, certainly understands, storytelling. Jared St. Laurent is there. I'll enjoy working with him so far. And David Sahadi will be directing the show. And I've worked with David before, a lot of respect for David. So there's a lot of good things going on there. Talent-wise, there's some interesting talent there. Can't wait to work with Matt Riddle and Paul Walter Hauser. That's kind of all started with him. I'm doing an interview with him on Wise Choices, and we're talking about WCW, and he's like, "Man, it would be fun if you kind of got back into it." And I thanked him for thinking that way. And before I know it, he's on the phone with Court saying, "Hey, what if we bring Eric in one night? Let him have the show." And I'm thinking, okay, Court's going to thank you, but no thank you. And don't ever call me on live television again or whatever. But Court put it up the phone, said, "Absolutely, let's do it." And look, it's one night, right? It's just going to be fun. That's the main thing. And I told Court right off the bat, if I'm going to do this, not only do I have to have fun, but you guys have to have fun too. If it's going to be just a gig or, forcing something, I'd rather not. I don't want to show up and be the general manager for the night and do some dastardly general manager bullshit. I've been there, done that. But if it's a chance to really get in and work and collaborate with some smart people and have fun doing it, I'm all in. And I can't wait to do it. So far, I'm having fun with it. We're going to figure out some really cool ways to kind of make this show feel like at least my fingerprints are on it. That's all.
It's happening at the Melrose Ballroom in Queens, New York on Thursday, December 5th. Tickets are on sale now, MLWNYC.com. And by the way, if you're going to go stir it up with disco today, take it from our man Marcus, who tweeted us live during the show today, who said, "Not really a question, but more of a compliment for Disco. He's one of the nicest people you'll come across in Las Vegas, and all his coworkers have nothing but awesome things to say about him." There you go, Eric. Let's get a one shot of you disco dancing. Let's get out of here on a high note. Disco fever, disco fever. Yeah. All right, we'll see you next week right here on 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free Shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.